Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We're back as we're going to steer you through to the Hill Dickinson Stadium, quite literally, and that's a mouthful. Back on the show with me, 3 top-tier guests that are going to give you all the information, the guidance, and touch upon maybe some concerns there are out there during, of course, this Last Word on Spurs. I'm joined by Lubo, returning to the show, Jonathan Hamme. The Spurs 5 boys are here, and Ash is here from the Spurs Kings as we build up to, of course, Everton to come at the weekend. A fairly quiet week in the Spurs fan base. Nothing really too concerning as to what's going on. A week where it's fair to say it's been interesting. Like I say, I think we all know at the start of a manager's reign, you know, there's always intrigue, hope, excitement. And it's going to be interesting to see how Thomas Frank navigates the next couple of weeks in charge, because there's some massive, massive games in there. And it'll be interesting to get the guys' thoughts on it. During this show, we'll be touching upon, of course, Tottenham's big game away to Everton on Sunday. We'll be talking about Thomas Frank that has taken his seat in his press conference over this last 24 hours since we've been recording here, and touching upon a little bit of transfer snippets that we've had over this last 24, 48 hours. Let's ask the guys how they all are. Lubes, love to see you back alongside us.
Yeah, all
happy?
Good.
All happy?
All good today, thanks. All good. Looking forward to the weekend. Another match.
Always
another
interesting.
day.
Yeah, they're coming thick and fast. 7 in 22 days. So it's a crazy, crazy period. And at that kind of pace they're coming, there's got to be remaining composure and calmness, right, Lubes, at the moment?
Oh, for sure. Well, it's, where's the panic? I see the meltdown on the on social media this week, and 2 defeats in 13 games. I know it's not pretty, but I'd rather that than the back end of last season when we lost 10 and drew 1 of the last 12 games. So it's a bit of an improvement, big improvement.
We'll come on to it. A lot to discuss during this show. Also back on, fresh-faced, Ash Matic's back from Spurs Kings. Ash is smiling away. Ash, how are you? Love to see you back along.
Hey, big up Johnny, big up Ricky, and I have to call you Ian, man. I can't call you by that name, man. That name is crazy to me. That's why I'm smiling so much. Yes, well, big up the chat as well, man. It's good to be back. It feels like it's been a minute. But yeah, man, all things Spurs. Let's get into it, man. There's a lot to talk about.
I mean, Ash, when you're away for a week, it feels like a month in Tottenham world, right? Because so much goes on game to game. It's really hard to keep up. One man also back on the show. Delighted to have him back alongside us here. Regular guest on this show. Got in the last year or two. I bet he's delighted about that. Me forcing him on here. Although I've got handcuffs on him. Don't worry. You might say I've got handcuffs on him in the later part of the season, depending on what goes on here. Jonathan Hamme's back, John. Lovely to have you here. How are you?
Always good to be here. Hello to everyone in the chat, Lubo and Ash, and you, Ricky. You said we're here for guidance. I feel like a blind man with a walking stick at the moment. Talking of a blind man and a walking stick, I just thought I'd quickly address something. I had all these people messaging me about Jason saying this and that about me to do with Thomas Frank. Guys, right, when you come on a show like this and you voice your opinion like I do, and someone comes on and says something, they're entitled to it. If you put yourself out here, right, and say something, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, right? So I've got nothing but admiration for listening to Jason all these years on the show, right? I agree with some of his stuff. I disagree with some of his stuff, but it's all fun and banter. I don't take any of it seriously. So all of those of you who are messaging me, saying, did you hear what Jason said about you? Yeah, I did. And I'm quite happy with it. It's fine.
Mate, the reason why I love having you on this show is, number one, I think you're a really down-to-earth guy. And number two, you'll say your opinion with your chest. And I think that's why I think, the guests that we have on the show, the reason why I think people love the guests that we have on the show is everyone says it with their chest. They say how they feel. And the thing is, we know it's a game of opinions, right? We're not all going to feel the same. 100%. We're all going to get different points with different managers. I mean, we've gone through so many managers in this last God knows how many years that it's impossible to feel the same about everybody at all times, right? And as we know from last season, the season before that, everyone's got certain pressure points about what they want. And I think that's a really key point you touched upon there, which, John, I don't think you even needed to address, but bless you, the kind of guy you are, you're going to address it.
Look, if I'm going to be vocal about anti-Ange and I'm going to be vocal about pro-Frank, then when it's like this, I have to answer back or, get in with the group and take it and accept it for what it is. But
Yeah.
I'm very calm about it. Basically, I think the situation is not great. The football's not great. But, I believe you can only build a beautiful house when you've got the right tools. And all we've got at the moment is a nice little basement. The rest of it is missing, in my opinion. Anyway, let's get on with the show, man.
Absolutely, mate. Listen, lovely to have you here alongside us. And again, it's an interesting week or so in the in the duration of where Spurs are right now, because we know we've got a massive fixture schedule coming up. That, of course, begins and resumes again with Everton at the weekend. And like I said, we'll touch upon kind of where Spurs are, because it's an opportunity to get back to winning ways. Of course, visiting Everton on Sunday. We have endured a challenging week, a week which, of course, you could say started with being beaten 2-0 at home by Villa last time out, before an impressive performance really from a Granada Courier midweek that did see a scraper draw at Monaco. Lubin, I'll open with you. What have you made of the last 7 days at Spurs, and how crucial is it we try and get some momentum now ahead of what I've described as a crazy period coming up? 7 games in 22 days, right?
Yeah, I think it was this week's been a real mix. I think the performance against Villa, although not outstanding, particularly great, I thought that was probably our best performance at home this season. Burnley was a bit, they were first game back in. I thought we dealt with them, picked them off when we needed to. Bournemouth and Wolves were poor. I thought we were much better against Villa. That by far the best. Mind you, Bournemouth were very good as well. I thought Villa were good opposition. They set up, they had a strong midfield. We restricted them literally to the 2 goals they scored, which I thought were poor goals. There were 2 worldies, but I think we could have done better. But I think overall, I didn't think we deserved to lose. Monaco, we got the result thanks to Vicario. I thought it was a poor performance, particularly second half. But Paolini again played well. Bentancur did a lot of mopping up, but even allowing for that, we gave away 23 shots, which was disappointing. The important thing was that we came away with the points. We stayed unbeaten. You look back on results, there's nothing you can do to change it, but you can change, you can improve on things going forward. So for me, I'm not one of those. I'm speaking to fans over the last few days that are saying, I'd much rather see a better performance, even if we lost. Well, I don't want to lose. I'd rather see them stick it out and dig out a 0-0 draw. Although we're not going to be, if we carry on playing like this, we're going to get caught out, because Miramino forgot his shooting boots. The centre forward at Bodo Glimt missed a penalty and blazed over from 8 yards. We're going to be playing against centre forwards in the next few days who are not going to be missing these chances. So he needs to pick it up, Frank. The performance, Villa was okay, Monaco was poor. We need to start improving. And I know he's not got much to work with. The squad's thin. We're missing Romero and Udogie, as well as Maddison and Kulu. Simmons hasn't yet got into it. He's still settling in. There are a lot of negatives at the moment, and he looks at his front line that he had last year at Brentford, and he looks at the front line this year, and he must think, Jesus, this is a drop down in quality. So he's not got an easy job, Frank. This is the result of 10 years of poor transfer windows. We've had a few good players that have come in, like Wanyama in 16, like Romero. There haven't been many. When you look at the number of players we've bought and the amount of players that you can look at and think, well, they've been successful in terms of purchases since that really good window of 15 when we bought Toby, Dele and Son. And it's all coming back to roost now. It's the result of 10 years of neglecting the transfer window. Harry and Sonny, who carried the club for years, are not there. So it's difficult. He's not got an easy job. Picking up a team that hadn't been coached for 2 years as well, it's really not easy. So for me, he's doing his best. We desperately need new players. We need players back from injury. it's important that he gets something from Everton, because Wednesday and I think Wednesday we're going to be looking at a team of players that are rotated, because you just can't. You've got Chelsea next, then you've got Copenhagen. You just can't keep playing the same players every single game. So he's going to rotate again, I think, on Wednesday, which, you look at it and you think to yourself, would do very well to get anything. Chelsea are our bogey team, like we are to City. So I fear for the next 3 games, we've got to get something on Sunday.
It's interesting. I mean, look, Lubin, I agree with what you're saying there. It's, as we've touched upon it, it's a really big run coming up for Spurs. And I think the thing is, Ash, at the moment, I'm already seeing murmurings in the fan base, concerns about style of play. Look, I mean, I think a lot of us knew out there that when you change manager again, it's never going to be easy straight away to get everything right. And we've got some really good comparison numbers that Johnny's very kindly drawn up for the show that we'll bring in shortly, in terms of where other managers were at this point in their reign and how that does marry up and work. But I mean, Ash, look, we know our away form's been really impressive so far this season. It's a pattern that Frank will obviously want to continue with Everton on the horizon as we make our first trip to Everton's new stadium. Everton have just won one of their last 6 outings, but do comfortably sit mid-table. And their success has no doubt been down to a lot of it from Jack Grealish's contribution. We'll come on to him a bit later in the show, but it does feel like a big next couple of weeks for Spurs. Is that fair, Ash, given recent performances? How do you see it for you at the moment with regards to fan mood right now, Ash? I'll get you to unmute from your end.
Yes, Ricky. I think the issue, I think you hit the nail on the head, is style of play. The issue isn't the results. I think if you're going to compare Thomas Frank to previous managers, then you're going to see positive footprint. You're going to see things, don't go too soon, people, because some of these other managers that were successful for Spurs, they've got similar records. But I think where fans are coming from, they're not coming from a 17th perspective. They're not even coming from necessarily a Europa Cup winning team mentality. We need to kick on. They're coming from a perspective of, we are Tottenham Hotspurs and we play a certain brand of football. And when they don't see that brand of football or that style moving in the right direction, or we don't see any evidence of it, that's where the frustration kicks in for some fans, not all fans. And I think what we're seeing at the moment is an absence in central progression in terms of the midfield. So we've seen different combinations, but the main combination we've been seeing is Bentancur and Paulinho. Now, for a lot of people, they think that profile is very similar. So 2 kind of defensive central midfielders. One's a bit more of an aggressive 6. One's more of an 8, meaning he does a bit of both, which is a bit more attacking and the defending. But they're both midfielders that would recycle the ball. They do have passing range where they can play balls, over the top or long balls, etc. But they're not really midfielders that are going to get on the ball and make things happen, if that makes sense. And now the manager has picked those 2 players in particular in a few games consecutively. And when we're at home, I think the biggest talking point was you can't play those players when we're at home because we need to be in the front foot. But I don't think it's the home issue. I go back to what I said earlier in terms of style of play. And when we go against certain teams, e.g. Everton, Spurs fans expect us to have more of the ball, dominate them, and be a bit more front-footed, meaning that we dominate in their half. We don't dominate in the mid-third or the defensive third. We dominate because people look at the possession stats and they say, yeah, look, we've got a lot of the ball. But if we're passing between the centre-backs or if the midfield gets on the ball, then he recycles it to the fullback and there's no progression centrally, then that's where fans start to get a little bit frustrated. I go to Monaco, for example, and what I've seen previously before Monaco and Aston Villa, those 2 games in particular, we're seeing one of the midfielders happens to be Bentancur, can be Paulinho, but it's Bentancur mainly at the moment, drop in between the 2 centre-backs to make a back 3. So what happens then is you only have one midfielder in the middle of the pitch. The other midfielder joins the attack. Let's say it's Xavi Simons, for example. So now you've got a 6 in defense. You've got an 8 in Paulinho, for example, in the middle of the park by himself. And then you've got Xavi with the attackers in the 4. So you've got almost a 4-1-5, if that makes sense, or 4-1-6. So there's a bit of disparity in the midfield. And that's why you're seeing horseshoe Hotspur. You'll see a lot of fans complain about the U shape. Why is it a U shape? And tactically, that comes down to Frank and the way he wants to play. Because you're like, Bentancur, why is he playing sideways? Why is he always playing it to a Porro? Why is he not playing it more centrally? Well, number one, if you see where he is on the pitch, he's either playing at the fullback area or he's playing as a centre back. And even when he does push a little bit higher up, he's looking for Porro, the fullback, or he's looking for Kudos, who's further up as a winger. Do you know what I mean? But the point is, we're always looking for the wide players and we're never playing centrally, which means we never dominate higher up the pitch, which means, and it looks like we're risk averse when really we're not, but it looks like we're not risking it and we're not trying to make those passes in the attacking third. And that's where the problem is. And look, if we go down the sides, it's not a problem. It's not a problem if you go down the sides, as long as it's effective. However, my thing as a fan, personally, I would like to see some adaptation where sometimes we do go through the middle. Sometimes we have the number 10, say Xavi, drops in and he creates a midfield 3 and the 6 doesn't drop so deep. He's alongside the number 8. And then you can have triangles on your left. You can have triangles on your right. How many times have we seen triangles? We know football's all about angles. How many times have we seen straight lines? And there was an incident. There's a reason why I bring this up, because there was an incident when Bentancur got on the ball and we were playing at the back against Aston Villa. And he's got nowhere to turn. So a lot of people are blaming Bentancur. Oh my days, Bentancur's lost it. Get him out of the team. He's no good. But when he's on the ball, the reason why he dithers on it for so long and he's holding on to the ball is because he's got no option. He's got no inside pass. Football for me is all about angles. Against Monaco, Archie Gray's inverted. I seen the coach tell him, no, I don't want you to invert. I want you to stay out wide. As he stayed out wide, there's no passing angle for us to play out from the back than to hit the winger, for example, to Odobert. If they're both standing in a straight line, you've got Archie Gray in a line alongside Odobert in a line. It's harder for him to make that pass, especially if he's not left-footed, because that passing lane is blocked off. Am I making sense? So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying Frank, he's been terrible tactically, this and that. I'm just saying there's a few tweaks he can make, in my opinion, where he stops the distances between defenders and midfielders and the attackers by bringing them a lot more closer and bringing extra bodies centrally so we can build up the pitch in the attacking third so it doesn't look like, this horseshoe football and it looks like we're the antagonists. Whereas when he was at Brentford, that was allowed because, they weren't expected to have a lot of the ball. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Whereas at Spurs, we're expected to have a lot of the ball. We're expected to be front-footed, etc. But I'm sure Johnny's got a lot to say on what I've just said. But yeah, let me just shut up.
Ash, thank you so much. And just to be very clear, you did explain that very, very clearly. John, I'll bring you in. Look, it's been a mixture of both promise and frustration so far under Frank to begin with. We've played some really good football in certain moments. We've looked incredibly dangerous going forward at times, but we're also trying to make use of a multi-pronged attacking approach. And with that being said, we've really struggled to find a degree of consistency. I think you said this on previous shows. We've looked very strong in that phase 1 period of defending. I think attacking clearly is still needing to be worked on. What have you made of the last 7 days or so in the world of Tottenham, if you could summarise that?
I would say, the results may be good, but the performances do not match the results. That's what I would say. I would say, am I happy to get the points? Absolutely. Am I happy with the performance that we achieved to get those points? No. But listen, I'm not really disagreeing with what Ash is saying, to be truthful with you. I think though that, you know, a lot of teams now setting up with a low block. And if you look at the stats, I was looking at Arne Slot the other day, bemoaning the fact that one of the reasons why Liverpool, you know, lost the last 4 games is all of a sudden teams are going long on them, low block and going long. 178 long balls in the last 7 games. 75 long balls when they played Man United. Low ball, low block, and then long ball out of defence. Now, when we tried to do that, okay, there's only one outlet really that we're going for, and that's Kudos. And the man who can actually do that and find the pass, who puts his foot on the ball and tries to draw the defence out, is Cuti Romero. And you could clearly see that we didn't have that avenue on the weekend. And we are completely devoid in the middle of the park of any creativity. None. Zero. Zip. I'm looking at Akalush, right? And, you know, I was a fan of his before the game, but whether he's fit for the Premier League or not, you know, he was like the conductor in the middle of the park. And I was like jealous of the fact that, you know, if only we had someone, you know, controlling the tempo in the middle of the park, passing the ball around. Him and Teze were sort of dominating us. I just think that we really don't have the tools to threaten teams up front. Richarlison's miles off it. Tell's not up for it. Odegaard, you know, he had not a bad first half, but even then, you know, he's not reading the play well enough. You had Archie Gray, who made probably 3 or 4 nice overlapping runs, and he never passed him the ball, never saw him coming. And as Ash quite rightly said, it's all about triangles. It's about relationships. It was about link-up play. There isn't any link-up play. Now, is that purely down to Frank's tactics, or is it down to the lack of intelligence and experience of some of the players that are playing? And I do worry about that, especially in that final third. And let's be honest, if you cut off Kudos, where is it coming from? Where is anything coming from if you cut him off? It's worrying, but I just think now a lot of clubs, if you look at Arsenal, for example, I don't know how to bring them up, but even they are struggling with that attack. They're struggling to break down a low block. And that's why everyone's turning them saying, you know, it could be the first time that Stoke City go on to win the Premier League, because they're winning everything in set pieces. They're grinding out. Even against Fulham last week, they ground out a 1-0 victory away from home at Fulham with a set piece. And, you know, it isn't easy, even with a top attack. And I just think to expect the attack that we've got, which couldn't fight its way out of a paper bag most of the time, to break down these low blocks, I think we're asking too much. And I feel like I can only really truly judge Frank's tactics and performance when we start to have a Solanke, a firing Simmons. And we saw bits of it with Kolo Muani, who, like, when he gets in position, he knows how to shield the ball and bring others into play. I think we might see it a little bit more, but there is no Vissa, Mbuemo, Shadi. There's no real threat other than Kudos for me out the front. It needs to improve. I hear people say this, change to a back 3. Yeah, maybe when Cuti Romero's back, but right now you can't do that. It's just the squad's not deep enough right now. That's my opinion.
John, appreciate it. And you've, John, very kindly given us a little bit of an overview here in terms of managers in their first 13 games. And I'll just read out to the audience, which is a really intriguing point when you consider Thomas Frank's first 13 games, won 6, drawn 4, lost 3, a goal difference for of 22, goals against 11. So that gives him a plus 11 goal difference. And obviously just the 1 loss there on the penalties. Pochettino's first 13 games in charge, won 6, drawn 4, lost 3, goal difference for 19, goals against 14, which gave him a plus 5 goal difference. So very similar starts in regards to both Frank and Pochettino. You could argue, obviously, Pochettino also then stumbled upon the Son Kane partnership, which of course Thomas Frank doesn't have right now available to him in terms of either player. I know one of the running themes across the summer loop was around the fact that he's walked into a squad without really having that maverick. And of course, we have got Kudus through the door. He's had Simmons through the door. But of course, at the moment, we've got no Maddison. We've got no Kulusevski. I know people don't really... I know Frank has been very clear. He doesn't want to use the injuries as an excuse. But is that even a fair, do you think, comparison, Lubo, to compare those two at the moment? Because there's a suggestion out there that from the start, you could see a distinct pattern and play with Pochettino and Frank. Was that fair at the time? Can you guys remember? I can see... I'll get Johnny back in a second, but Lubo, I'll come to you first. What do you think of that comparison at the moment?
Pochettino had most of his team when he joined. It literally only had, I mean, he bought Diary at the start of his first year. He had Lloris, Dembele, Vertonghen already there from 2012. Walker and Rose had joined earlier than that.
Yep.
And with, in fairness, he brought both of those through. Frank has come in. Simmons was bought because Maddison got injured for the year.
Yep.
Mwane's come in because Solanke's got injured. We filled the gap at number 6 with Palhinha. Takai, God knows. I mean, he's still injured. He's still hasn't got anywhere near.
And no update either as to where he's either, Lubin. No update on him at all.
No. And the other, so Kudus has replaced Sonny. So we haven't really strengthened too much. And Maddison's out for the season. Simmons will take time to settle. I don't see how, and we've lost all those goals from last year. We've lost 70 odd goals, I think, 60, 70 goals from Maddison, Son, Solanke, and Kudus. So the only person who's actually, you talk about goals and assists, Kudus has got 4 or 5, I think, in total. Richie scored 3. He hasn't scored for, I think he scored 1 in 11 games since Burnley. It's a tough job. I mean, if Frank had Poch's team from that 2014-15 season when Poch finished 5th, and he lost 12 games that year as well. I think we finished with something like 64 points. I think it was something like 19 wins, 7 draws, 12 defeats. So it wasn't a fantastic season.
I know. There was. I remember that first Pochettino season. We had some really disappointing results in the first season with Pochettino.
Yeah. So I just think everyone's got to calm down. I think the fact that our record, if you're calling PSG a defeat, I mean, for me in 90 minutes it was a draw. Then if that's depending on whether you classify as a draw or defeat, with Frank's record is slightly better than Poch's, but we're very similar. Semantics here. I don't know. I think Frank's done a good job with a very, very average mid-table squad.
Okay. I know Ash is keen to come back in, but John, I'll just come to you because you very kindly pulled these stats together for us. Before I do let you back in, I know you gave us also the interesting stats around Arteta, for example. 13 games in Arteta had, won 5, lost 4, drawn 4. Andoni Iraola, won 3, lost 7, drawn 3. He didn't win a game in his first 10 on Andoni Iraola. And then you come to Oliver Glasner, 13 games in, won 7, drawn 3, lost 3. Was it a first win? And then he lost, I think, the next 5 on the trot. So I think the point I'm trying to get to is that, when you're looking at such a small percentage of games, 13 games, it's really, really hard to make a judgment. I know, Johnny, you're probably coming to the fact as well. I mean, I remember in the Pochettino early period, we had some really bad home defeats. And if you remember, I mean, it was even suggested that if you lost to Villa, you might have even got the sack.
Yeah. I mean, listen. I mean, look. I was worried for Sean Dyche last night. If he'd have lost, he could have been for the tin tack. Who knows the way football's going at the moment? Look, all I see is if Frank needs to be more attacking. Okay, he needs to be more attacking. With what? With what exactly? Is he played? Has he played this season with an out-and-out proper striker? I would say no. I think we're 13 games in without what I would recognise as even a top striker, a reasonable striker. Maybe Richarlison for 2 games, maybe. But look, It is what it is. What I do know is that Richarlison, Solanke, Muani, Kudos, Tell, Odobert, Johnson, and Simmons have got 7 Premier goals. 7. I mean, Son, who's gone, has already got 9. I know he's playing for LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
7 goals. 7 goals between all of those players. I suppose you could blame Thomas Frank and say it's all Thomas Frank's fault why we're not scoring goals. But I just don't think any of them are good enough. And if you don't think they're good enough, surely, this is my mindset, that it is better to fight and not lose than okay. So if I'm going into a boxing match, right, and I'm fighting a guy who I know is much better than me and I don't have the tools, what do? My thing is to survive and try and get a result somehow. Or do I go all hell for leather and then get knocked out? That's what the fan base want him to do. Let's have a bit of style for half a round and get knocked out. Okay. I said to Lubo today, I see the people saying Thomas Frank, I thought he was this great improver and, how he should be improving these young kids and they should be fantastic. Well, if I start judo and I get a new judo teacher, I don't expect to be a black belt judo expert, right, within 8 weeks. I expect to improve somewhat. I can see that Odobert has improved a little bit. I can see Tell's trying to do things. He hasn't done it properly. But to expect all of these cards to come and drop into place so quickly, I think is foolhardy. But that's my opinion, and that's why we love football. It's about opinions, and mine obviously differs from others. I'm ready to give Thomas Frank a season in place and to judge him. If he had a full-strength squad, Ricky, right now, and these performances were coming, I'd be coming down on him as hard as anybody else. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I mean, look, just on that point there, because, I mean, the perception has been, Ash, that we've been a lot more solid because we have had clean sheets, but we know during the week we faced 23 shots against Monaco. We also conceded 16 shots to Leeds, 18 shots to Bodo Glimt. So the perception that we are a lot stronger is slightly skewed when you look at the amount of shots that we're facing. And also, we'll come on to in a second, there's been an interesting press conference in this last 24, 48 hours where, again, where is Sarr? What has Sarr been doing? We'll come on to that shortly. But what's your takeaway, Ash, for you in terms of what the guys have touched upon there?
No, I mean, that point you brought up in terms of how many shots we're conceding is you can't hide it. You can't hide it because Frank did say
it's a fact. It's a fact.
It's a fact, right? Because Frank did say he wants to work on out of possession play, defensive work. When we don't have the ball, he wants to be harder to beat. Hence why we're a little bit more, dare I say it, pragmatic. But if that's not working, then questions have to be raised. For example, against Monaco, we were a 4-4-2 out of possession. So we were defending, at times we were pressing, but when you're pressing in the 4-4-2 and you got one of your strikers pressing the goalkeeper or the centre-back, but they've got 3 centre-backs, we're outnumbered there. Do you know what I mean? So we're expecting Frank to maybe tweak and do maybe press in the 4-3-3 maybe. Do you know what I mean? To match up with their 3 centre-backs. We've got 3 forwards to make it harder centrally for them to progress the ball because there was times where they were punching balls through the lines centrally. And I'm like, Frank, you got to change this. This is a bit too easy for them to get through our block. So it's small things like that. It's the small tweaks that I want him to kind of work on out of possession. But coming back to the whole Pochettino thing, again, it's a different era, in my opinion. Yeah. So in that era, it was about teams were just clocking on to the style of the tiki-taka of Pep. So a lot of teams were trying to build out from the back. Yep. And this is when the Gegenpress was first kind of really pushed out there. Before Klopp came, Poch was really, involved in that high press. He was really aggressive out of possession. And not many teams were doing that type of play. Do you know what I mean? It was only us and then Liverpool when Klopp came in that were really aggressive. And the turnovers higher up the pitch paid dividends for us. And that's where we got a lot of our chances and a lot of our goals. But you fast forward on to now, there's so many different styles. Like Amorim, he plays completely different to the way we play, to the way that Bournemouth play. I look at Bournemouth, they don't have as many, high profile names as us. I know they have Semenyo, but the way they play, the way they go about pressing, the way they turn the ball over. Yes, we've got slightly more points than them. We're not far from them, but you'd say the style of play looks a bit more favorable at the moment. The argument, to my own point, the caveat is that, Iriola's had more time with those players, even though he's lost all of his centre backs, essentially. He's lost his full backs as well. He's been weakened. Frank's come in, he's been strengthened, he's been given a lot of players to work with. But Frank, in my opinion, he does need time. And I agree with the panelists. He has been improving players. For example, I feel like Danso is a lot more assured, especially in possession. He looks a lot more calmer. I think Odobert as well. You can see it game by game. He's gaining confidence. He's improving. There's still things to work on both of their games. I think with Danso, he still needs to work on finding that pass further forward. I'm not saying he's going to be any Romero, but we want players to kind of the midfield to vacate, the back two. We want the midfield to be higher up the pitch. And Danso and Van der Ven, they need to pass through those lines. They need to be a bit more adventurous. They need to switch those plays when they can out to the flanks. And that will help our team push up the pitch. Also, Odobert with his physicality, he needs to learn how to use his body to be a bit stronger. It's not all about having protein shakes, going to the gym and bulking up. It's about using your body, using your hips, using your upper body strength. But if you look at someone like, for example, for the Chelsea lad, he's quite tall, slim.
You talking?
No, the midfielder. I forgot his name.
Estavo.
Estavo. Their main guy. Their main Chelsea.
Fernando's Casado.
The main guy, Palmer. Sorry, I don't know why I'm having up my head.
I was going to list the entire Chelsea midfield. We would have been here for a month.
Would have been last one on Chelsea.
14 in a holding cell somewhere.
The point I'm making, Palmer's not a big guy. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But how many times do you see Palmer go to ground? Yeah. Hardly ever. So for me, it's about where these players receive the ball. That for me can be coached. How the players, when they do receive it, can they use their upper body strength? Can they use their hips to when they receive it, they're slightly more open? Can they see the picture 2 or 3 passes before it happens? Do you know what I mean? And a lot of these players are young, so they're going to need time and they're going to need those minutes on the pitch to get that experience. And I think because we've had 2 different windows, in my opinion, 2 different strategies, I mean, with Ange Postecoglou, Langer and Scott Munn, we went heavily youth-centric. Hence why we're not as far as where we need to be, because we went too far one way with Archie Gray, Bergvall. Bergvall's another example, too many touches. Do you know what I mean? Where he needs to get the ball, lay it off, bounce a pass, and then move into the space where he's vacated. And that creates spaces and passes for other players. Not if he takes too many touches, he's cutting that space out. So it's those little small details that they are working on. Cochrane's probably in the background now. He's taking those notes and he's saying, Bergvall, that's what we need to do a little bit different. They've got the videos, etc., etc. So that's the reason why they changed the approach. I'm sorry I'm going on for so long. We changed the approach to get proven players now to see that we can move up the pitch. And that's the reason why Paulinho sticks out like a sore thumb and Kudos stick out like a sore thumb, because they're both players that have that experience in the Premier League. They have that physicality and they're able to push us up the pitch. Maybe in January, maybe we get another proven player and that helps us to move up the pitch. Doesn't kind of mask away from the glaring obvious, I think, problems we have at the moment, which means the gaps, as I said before, the gaps are way too big, in my opinion. Like your number 10 should be so far away from your number 6, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean? And you can't stand on a straight line, meaning the fullback and the winger can't stand on that same line. They need to start at an angle, and we need to give a lot more freedom to players like a Kudos to roam. I think Kudos, for me, is too far isolated. I know why they want to have 1v1s against the fullback, but I think he's got so much more on his locker. Let him roam a little bit just to mix up the game and keep the other team guessing. So there's just small things.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ash, at the beginning, we start to see a little bit of a relationship forming between Kudos and Porro.
Oh, punt.
For the triangle, there doesn't, that last component of the triangle doesn't seem to be there. I don't know whether that's the runs being made by Richarlison or Tell or what have you, but it just seems to just fall apart in that last final part of the scenario.
It's because when Bentancur has the ball, they're asking him not to risk it centrally. They're saying to him, we want you to pass it that way outside of the block. Because when teams are defending against us, they defend in either a 4-3-3 or 4-4-2 or even a 4-5-1 if they're ultra, negative. Some do mid block, some do low block, some do a mixture like Aston Villa. They went defensive. They kind of was a 4-4-2 and they pressed us on one side and they forced errors. But sometimes what we need to do, like for Bentancur, the fullback would need to sometimes invert, not all the time. I'm not saying he lives out there, or the midfielder, for example, for Xavi, instead of him floating right side, central and left, pick a struggle, my brother. Stay left or stay central. And then when the ball comes to Bentancur and he's playing fullback, for example, and we receive the ball, because what, not Lloris, Vicario passes it to Van der Ven all the time with his left foot. When Van der Ven passes it out to the fullback, whoever that be, the second player needs to drop in that kind of half space, that pocket, rather than passing it straight down the line or going lobbing it over the top.
That's what they're doing it
because they can read that play and it's predictable.
They're not finding those pockets, though, Ash. They're not finding those pockets.
But also, Johnny, the rotation needs to happen. There needs to be fluidity. So sometimes it's Spence, sometimes it's Bentancur, and then with Spence, he needs to open up his body shape as well. Because sometimes when he receives the ball, he's right-footed. He's closing off his body angle. Therefore, he can't get that pass out wide.
In the final third, he definitely is.
Positioning, because sometimes he's too close to the flank. He needs to. Sometimes you need to invert. Sometimes you need to get a bit high. Sometimes you need to drop in. But then the other player needs to drop in as well. It's not like there's no point you staying high up. Everyone's staying high up because it's too big of a triangle, Johnny. Triangles need to be smaller and more compact.
Yeah,
that's where
they're too detached. I mean, the other thing is, like people having to go at Bentancur for the Villa game. He made 12 interceptions, but it's the delivery. It's from that point where you've intercepted the ball. It's how we deliver that ball from that point on. And Simmons I believe Simmons needs to stay more central. He's drifting all over the place. There was a moment where he picked up the ball where we broke on the counter, and his first reaction was to check back rather than drive forward. Look. Listen, it ain't perfect, mate. It's not.
This is my point.
I'm going to quickly go to Lubo, and then we're going to go and hear from Thomas Frank. Lube's coming there for us very quickly. What do you want to say on that point?
Well, just talking about the stats on shots, just first on.
Go for it.
The 23 shots against us by Monaco. The previous 6 games were 73. So 96 in 7 games, which is a worrying trend.
It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot of shots. It is a lot of shots.
It is a
lot. I know. Just to let you respond, Lubo, I know we've had 6 clean sheets in there.
Yeah.
And I know we've got no Maddison or Kulusevski, but I know you've been around football for a long time as a fan. It's a worrying trend, right? That trend's you've got to come down.
It's got to come down because you won't have a situation like the Bodo centre forward that's blazing penalties into space, and Miramino that's thinks he's playing rugby instead of football.
Yeah.
So the other thing in terms of the way we play, for me, Spence should be right back because unfortunately he slows things down because he cuts back onto his right foot and he slows the whole flow. Whereas with Udogie is naturally left-footed, goes down the line, plays the ball straight down, continues his run. He was building a nice partnership with Odegaard. And the other thing also is that Spence is a much better defender than Porro. Again, we seem to be seeing teams flying down their left and our right, picking out Porro as the weak link defensively, which he is. I'd be playing Spence there. I don't know where you put Porro. I'm not sure whether for me maybe you play him as a wing back with 3 at the back when Romero and Udogie are back. But for me, the back 4, you've got to play Spence, and then maybe you've got two guys playing on their natural side, then maybe you'll start to see more angles, more patterns of play, people coming in and linking up. I agree with Johnny about Bentancur. Yeah, put out a lot of fires, doesn't progress the ball quickly enough. It's like he gets the ball and it's square. So he's playing square. Bentancur's playing square. You've got your fullbacks playing straight. They're not mixing it up at all. There's no variety. And you know, if you start putting 2 or 3 players on Curtis, then you cut out the creativity that we've got.
Yeah, I think it's really cool what you said there. I think the thing at the moment is, I mean, that there is a heavy reliance on Kudus, isn't there? Because there's nobody else in the team you feel that is at the moment going to be that creative spark. And I know there's real excitement around Javi Siemens. I know for some they feel he's not had the greatest start to life at Spurs, but I'd say for a player like him, it's going to take time. You know, he's just come to the league. You've got to give someone at least some time to acclimatise to a new league, a new manager, new players. We're going to come back to Lubin in a second. Let's quickly hear from Thomas Frank, who does address and was asked the question around team performances on this season and what he's made of the performances so far. Let's quickly hear from Thomas Frank.
Do you think those elements of performance are on track with what you expected by this point?
I think if we look at the performance we played in the games we played so far, I'm happy with how many games we played? 13. I think there's been one bad game against Bournemouth. There's been a bad second half against Wolves and a bad second half against Monaco. I think the rest have been good or good plus or very good. And when I talk that, I'm not talking about everything is free floating, but I just think your role, how you're competitive in a game, you are aggressive, you play with intensity, you try to get chances, you play behind them, and all that. I think that's the way you build a culture on a team.
Spurs have had fairly unprecedented change, obviously, over recent weeks and months, and we're a few weeks away from the big one of Daniel Levy leaving. How have you seen the changes in the club over the last few weeks? Have you noticed any, and has there been anything on the team?
Anything on what on the team?
Have you noticed any effects of the wider structural changes that's been going on in the club over recent weeks? Have you noticed that have any effect on the team? And how has it been generally in recent weeks with the changes?
I think that's, how can you say, the day we decided that Daniel was not here anymore was of course a little bit, how can you say, unusual is probably the word to use. And then there were first couple of weeks a lot of questions from you guys. I need to answer that and a little bit in the media and all that. But since then, it's, you get on with things. I focus on trying to prepare the team the best possible way with my coaching staff. I think the players they how can I say, they are in their own little bubble and world and try to do the best they can to perform and make sure we're in the best possible place. So for me, it's now it's a little bit like business as usual.
That was Thomas Frank there on the press conference that he held ahead of the game, of course, against Everton. John, I know you're keen to come in there. Just before you do come in, let me ask you a question. Obviously, he said there, for those that have missed the full press conference, that Tottenham only played one bad match in full this season, and that was the Bournemouth game. There were bad second halves against Wolves and Monaco, but I think the rest have been good or good plus. I'm looking into every aspect in terms of what I can do to maximise performances and make sure we look as good as possible. We also went on to say that if Tottenham aren't free-flowing, it's about making sure the team remain solid, and insists he's working very hard to get a flow with the current front four due to the injuries of his current Spurs attacking players. Of course, he would love to have Solanke, Kudu and Maddison. They're not in the squad at the moment, but he's working to what he's got. I mean, I know the press conference has taken a bit of a surprise to some Spurs fans about what he's come out of that. I think they would maybe, I can't speak for all Spurs fans, maybe they would like to be a bit more critical about displays. What's been your takeaways for how some reacted to that press conference? I know we've got to squeeze in Everton. I know we're conscious of time. Very quickly making that.
Well, as Frank would say,
You have Jason on the phone in half hour.
There was more erring. There's a lot of erring. So maybe he's erring on the side of caution. Look, the fact of the matter is, he's building. We all know that it's not perfect.
So you were catching in for a second when you
I'm trying to
catching on.
Frankisms, right? Look, I think he said it's about getting some rhythm and building from the block and being solid. The first thing he said, when I come to this club, with a club that's conceded 66 goals, lost 22 games and finished 17th, we have to get this defence back to defending. Because if you don't concede a goal, you don't lose games. And we can see he's trying to do that. It's still not perfect. He also said we have to be better at set pieces, defending them and scoring from them. I think we can see progression in that. But we can see quite clearly that the flow, as Ash has quite eloquently described before, is not right and it falls apart. And that's the element of the game which he needs to improve. And he's quite rightly said he's missing the tools, and through injuries, without actually blaming injuries, why it's not all firing on all cylinders. But we overanalyze as fans, and we look for every micro comment, and we take that micro comment and we hang it out there and let's talk about it for 3 hours. And you can do that if you want. You can do that if you want, and that's what YouTubers do. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say it's what they do, right? Moving on.
Joel, thank you so much. Just, Lubo, I want to come over to you and we'll go to Ash. One thing he did mention and wanted to be clear on is that Mateta, he has firmly insisted this. He's done nothing wrong, but simply the reason for his non-selection has been other players have done well in his position. He said he's a very good player. He was great for us in the first 6 games. We rested him as a precaution, but it's competition. And other players have done well, but he's impressed me a lot. I know for some fans at the moment, they're quite baffled how Mateta is not starting games, given the impact he did make at the early part of the season. Are you baffled, Lubo, by his non-selection at the moment?
For me, it's a mix because he was being played as a 10, wasn't he? And for me, he's not a 10. So it depends. If you're going to play a totally pragmatic game, then you throw maybe Sarr in on Sunday with Palhinha and Bentancur. I thought Bergvall, unfortunately, was poor. I like Bergvall. I think he's had a run of 2 or 3 games where he's underperformed. Not sure if he's trying too hard. He's running into blind alleys. He's losing the ball a lot. I think Frank's got to calm him down and just get him to play a little, in a more calmer fashion. It's too busy. It's very frenetic. Reminds me a bit, just in terms of being frenetic, just the way Lamella was. Just there was no calmness to his game. And I think Bergvall's a terrific talent, and I think he'll be potentially he could go a really long way. As far as Sarr's concerned, Simmons came in. Sarr hasn't played much since Simmons started playing. Simmons is struggling. Does he bring Sarr in and close up the midfield on Sunday? He could well do.
Does he for you? Does he for you, Lubo? Does he for you?
Against Everton, yes, I probably would. I would probably play him. I might even play 4. I might even, and have Simmons and just play 2 up top, to be honest, and play Kudus and probably start with Moani. I think I'd start with him and play Simmons behind them, play a 4-3-1-2.
Yep.
Lock up because Everton are strong physically. They'll come out for a battle. I drop Porro and play Spence at right back because I think he will be far better suited to coping with the threat from Grealish down the left. And I'd probably keep Gray at left back, I think, to play against Ndiaye. So that's how I would play it. I bring Sarr back in is the answer to the original question, Ricky.
Okay, Luke.
That's how I play.
We've also had, we're going to come on to Everton in just 1 second. We've had some interesting comments from Pedro Porro on so far what he's made of the season at Tottenham. These are really intriguing from Porro because it depends how you take these comments. Porro said in the last 24 hours that we're not in a bad situation, but let's hope the second win comes. And he's talking about the Champions League group. The other day in the draw against Monaco, I said it in the dressing room. We don't have the right mentality. And in this competition, they run you over and you don't even realise it. It's almost a suggestion there, Ash. I know we're very conscious of time here, that the mentality for me when I looked at the lineup for the game against Monaco was that we're going there for a point. Now, we ended up with a point, but we know we also ended up with a lot of shots on our goal. What do you make of those comments there from Pedro Porro about the mentality? Is that the players? Is that the way Frank's asking to play very quickly? What do you make of those comments quickly? Because we've got to squeeze in Everton.
I'll try my best, bro. After time, though. After time.
That's not me rushing.
Listen, we need to break things down, man. Listen, a lot's been said, and a lot of points are true.
I've just moved the sushi delivery forward.
Yeah. Listen. Poro's talking about bravery. That's what he's talking about, because a lot of people would say that he had a poor game.
Yeah,
but he was risking the ball in areas where he thought it was worth risking it. Other players were shying off from trying to play those balls. And that's what he means. Like, if you don't take it to these teams, if you're not trying to pass into space, dangerous areas, pass it through the middle, pass it down the line, etc., cross it where you need to cross, take your man on, etc., show that kind of front-footedness. If that's not happening, you're going to lose in these type of games. Do you know what I mean? What are we doing with the ball when we have it? Are we playing it safe? Are players hiding? So that's what I'm getting from that.
Is that your
that's my particular, because I'm thinking he's going towards the players, the people in the dressing room. Because you know how we're all nicey on this panel. I guarantee you, bro, in the dressing room, they're ripping each other's heads in. They're laying into each other. They're probably laying into Richarlison. Everyone's like, oh, you can't say this, you can't. They're like, as a group, I think when it comes to football, like, I've been in certain dressing rooms and it's not nice. People call each other out and they have it out. I remember it was Son and Lloris in the documentary. And Son's going at Lloris is going at Son, Yeah. And that's with the cameras on. Can you imagine when the cameras are off?
Yeah.
Understand how...
It's what I mean. I found it quite interesting, Ash, at that point. Just to bring the guys in very quickly, because we've got to go to Everton for a quick five. That I thought what was interesting is that you saw Vicario and Gray's interviews.
Disgusting. Vicario, I thought, was disgusting, mate. He threw everyone under the bus. Mate, what about your mistakes? For the last 3 weeks, you've been under pressure. You've been under the microscope. Suddenly you have a good game and you want to come out and start saying that stuff. I didn't agree with that, right? That's for the dressing room, personally.
Okay. So you saw that, Johnny, as him openly coming out and criticising the playing group. That's how you saw it.
I did.
Would you agree, Lubo? Is that how you took it with Vicario's criticism? Because quite interestingly, Mickey van der Ven, of course, did his interview last week after the Villa game, and he was quite scathing about the attack. So how are you taking it, these comments? And you had Porro come out with these latest comments. How are you taking it?
They're being honest. I'm fed up with coming.
Are they being honest about the team or being honest about the way they're being set up?
Oh, crikey! That depends how you want to take it. That's how you want to interpret what they're saying.
How do you interpret it? Those comments.
Well, I'm fed up with watching interviews on television where players are just cliches, and it's like, the media guys told them exactly what to say. They've got no personality, and it's very stilted. Vicario, for me, yes, he's been at fault for a goal at Brighton, goal against Wolves, and goal against Leeds. But for me, for shot stopping, we've been far bigger trouble if it hadn't been for Vicario the last 2 and a bit years. So I've got no problem with him coming out and criticising. Sorry, if players haven't got the right attitude, Johnny, that's a disgrace. I'm sorry, that is a disgrace. These boys are professionals. They're being paid enough.
I agree with that.
They come out. They've got to give 100%. Never mind when he says mentality. Must be talking about a weak mentality. Players have got to be strong. They've got to come out. They've got to believe in themselves, and they've got to give 100%. Now, for me, were they giving 100%? Were they closing down at all? Were they just strolling around a bit on Wednesday? I felt sorry. I had a chat with 1 or 2 people that went over to Monaco who were just disgusted with the whole thing.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of frustration in the away end, I was told. And you guys, listen, Johnny and Luba, you're 2 regulars in the away end, so you would have known, to spend all that money out there and get that as a display. There would have been that frustration there. That's why I think it's very intriguing about the comments that are coming out from the players. I find it intriguing.
100% is a given. That's the minimum that fans expect from a player, from the team.
Yep.
So if Vicario's come out, he must be that pissed off. Must have been really cheesed off
Yeah.
Should players come out, Lubo, and say, "Well, we had a great game, but if it wasn't for Vicario making the mistakes, we would have won something," and start calling him out in the press conference? I don't think so.
I don't think he called out any specific play. He was just talking about the mentality.
I took it more John, as a team thing. But you're right. Maybe there's that argument that what happens in the dressing room maybe should stay in the dressing room, and what's been said should be said for the dressing room. But again, this is what it is now with football. You're not quite sure. Look, we do need to squeeze in Everton, but before we do, guys, I've had a couple of transfer snippets in. I'm going to get your opinion very quickly. I'm going to get 5 on Everton. Spurs, they are being linked with a potential move. This might be music to some people's ears because this might be exactly what Tottenham need at the moment. They've been linked with a move for the Crystal Palace striker, French striker as well, Jean-Philippe Mateta. He's continued his fine form into this season with 5 goals for Palace in their first 8 Premier League games. There's suggestions that he's unlikely to engage in a new contract with Palace. But you do feel with Tottenham, if they're going to try and launch a move for Mateta, then one of the current set of forwards would have to move on. And there are suggestions that David Moyes would be keen to bring Richarlison back to the football club, and how unique, obviously, we're planning this weekend where Richarlison may end up starting centre forward for Tottenham. But apparently Moyes is laying the groundwork to bring Richarlison back to Goodison Park. This opportunity would obviously present a return and a reunion for Richarlison, back, of course, with the Everton fans, the Everton faithful that he was dearly loved. Very quickly on that, guys, I mean, a very quick yes or no. How realistic could you see that happening in January? Mateta coming in, Richarlison going out. Ash, I'm going to you for a yes or no. I can't even I'm trying to get you to do a yes or no. That might be really dangerous.
Yes, I'd say yes.
Yes, Ash, you're a star. Yes or no, Lubes? What do you reckon?
Would Parish let Mateta go? I don't know. Would I like to see Richarlison go to Everton? I'll drive in there.
Okay, Johnny, realistic. I'm sure you'll all be with us, obviously, of course, for January's window. What do you reckon, Johnny? One to see. Can you see it?
I take Mateta at a drop of a hat, but good luck here with Steve Parish. And as Lubo said, most people GoFundMe page wouldn't take 5 minutes to get the taxi fare to get Richarlison up there. I don't think.
Yeah, but Johnny, Levy's gone now.
Yeah,
that was the beef.
We'll find out. We'll find out, Ash, won't we? If that was the cause for concern.
We shall see.
Really
is it the new Enoch? Enoch new or?
We'll see. We'll see. Look, for our listeners on audio, Dave Dodsey at the Blue Room gives you a preview of Everton to come, of course, at the weekend. We're going to very quickly discuss it here. Look, the Premier League's finest away side, I mean, one of the division's doggiest home outfits, of course, on Sunday. Everton yet to suffer the sour taste of defeat at the Hill Dickinson Stadium. They've taken 8 points from 4 fixtures there. They are there, of course, full of confidence. Didn't come off the back of a decent result last time. They lost 2-0 to Man City at the Etihad in game week 8. In terms of team who's going into the game for Everton, they, of course, have Jack Grealish available to them. That really has been a massive difference for them so far this season. Made a great impact there. Iliman Ndiaye, I think the guys will touch upon as well. A very good player for Everton. He's got that ability to disrupt defences. He's aggressive in front of goal. Something that you don't want to see, obviously, Spurs face. And also, Idrissa Gana Gueye, an absolute workhorse for Everton. That will be, you'd imagine, centre of the part there. I'll ask the guys very quickly before a prediction. How do we approach the game? What do we do? Are we going with Polina and Bentancur? Ash, let's start with you. How do we approach this game against Everton? What do you need to see?
We need to be front-footed, but we don't need to rush. I feel like at the moment we're rushing. That's why we lose possession so frequently, and the turnovers are high at the moment. That's why we concede a lot of chances. I think we need to build up a little bit slower, just a little bit, because I think 2-3 passes, then hit the long ball. 2-3 passes, then switch to play. 2-3 passes, then find like one of the strikers drop in, and the rotations need to be a bit more fluid, irrespective who's in the side, irrespective of what players come in. I think just the last bit, Sarr coming in with Bentancur and Paulinho is way too safe, in my opinion. I respect Everton away.
Everton away.
Everton away. Even though Everton are a good team, do you know what I mean? And I do respect them. I still think Spurs have a better starting 11, in my opinion. I think if we were to be a bit more front-footed, we can get at them. Do you know what I mean? Equally, I do respect what Ndiaye does. Grealish against who's Grealish on the left, isn't it? So that would be against Porro. Grealish against Porro. Yeah, it's going to be mad. I think Grealish is going to tuck in, and then I think it's Yelemenko. Their wing back, basically, he inverts, and Grealish goes outside, and they rotate at times. So that might be a little Yemelenko. My bad. So he's the one to watch out for, because he's going to be the one overlapping, inverting at times, swapping over with Grealish, and that's going to cause a little bit of issue. So whoever's playing in front will be Kudus. Kudus going to need to help out Porro quite a bit, in my opinion, on that side. But Ndai against Spence, Spence bodies, Penetary, he's going to try and lock him up. So that'll be an interesting battle, in my opinion. But I won't bore you with anything more, bro.
Let me see. You never bore us. But I know we're conscious. It's Friday, isn't it? And it's one of those. Ash, prediction. What we going for?
Let's be positive. Spurs. Frank gets it right. Let's go for a 2-1, man. I'm trying to be positive now.
Okay. Ash, you're a star. Love having you back on. John, let's go to you. How do you see this game working out? Does Frank go with a safety of Polina and Bentancur? Does he play a bit more of a risk game and have one of Bergvall or Sarr in that midfield to partner maybe Polina or Bentancur? What do you see him doing?
I think, it's going to be a battle of the dribblers, isn't it? And Ndai versus Kudus, who's going to do the most dribbles. Look, I think, Moyes always sets up his teams as very, very hard to break down. I don't think they've let in more than 2 goals in any game this season. So you're going to be very, very hard to break them down. They're going to go low block, counter-attacking, and hope to catch us on the break when we're pushing forward with Ndai, Grealish, and Idris Gueye. The question is, I think this is all going to be about set pieces. What I was talking about before, long balls, set pieces, grinding out a result. They're strong in set pieces. We need to be strong in set pieces, both defensively and offensively. And I think that Spence can lock up and die. I'm worried, though, about, if I'm brutally honest, Grealish, who didn't play against Manchester City because he was tied up, couldn't play for his parent club. So he's had a lovely 2-week break, and he's going to be fresh as a daisy to come back in and attack him. And they got a really good record at home. Defensively, they're really good. Tarkowski, Keane, old guard, but very, very experienced. I think we need somehow, I don't know how, if somehow Richarlison can pull a game out of his backside and do some shithousery up front. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we're going to need something if we're going to get anything from that game. So I'm going to go. I'm going to the game with Lubo, but I would be.
I tell you what, the camera on YouTube would be better than the post-match shows, I reckon.
Honestly, I'm going to go there. I would be very happy to come away from there with a draw. We don't have a great record there. I don't remember the last time we won away at Everton.
Everton used to be such a happy hunting ground for us, didn't they? You guys remember? It used to be such a happy hunting ground Everton away.
Yeah. Was it 7 or 8? I can't remember how many.
Yeah, you're right. But you used to feel like you went to Everton, you'd always be guaranteed 3 points. But you're right. It's not easy. John, you reckon a 1-1?
I'm going to go 1-1. They'll play the monster Beto up front, won't they? I can't remember who else they've got up front. But listen, Barrett. Yes, very good. Yeah, he's another good one. Look, counter-attacking, they're going to try suck us in and hit us on the counter-attack. That's their strength and set pieces. We've got to exploit them at set pieces. I think that's our only hope of scoring, personally.
I didn't think I'd be presenting a podcast where it feels like we got Wigan versus. It feels like we got Wigan versus
Stoke versus Wigan, isn't it?
I feel like we're going back to Wigan versus Stoke here. God, what's happening here? Lubes, close us off. What are we going for? How do you see it panning out this game? What would you do?
Going to be hard. You look at their home records so far at the new ground. They've beaten Palace and Brighton, and drawn with Villa and West Ham. Yeah. So apart from the West Ham result, they've had 3 very good results there. I just think tight game, 1 apiece.
1-1.
1-1. We're better away from home this season than at home. We set up well. I would play 4-4-2 or 4-3-1-2. I play Simmons behind Kudus and Mawani and I bring Sarr in for the extra legs. As I said, Spence at right back to play Grealish.
Lubo, we need a performance.
Yeah,
we need
If we draw,
I agree. We need a performance.
Bro,
You know what, Ash? We need a result. I'm not into playing great football and losing. I'm sorry, that's waste of time.
Yeah, but I tell you, but I think with the games coming up, I know we're very conscious of time here. Well, I think we do need a performance to give us a bit of confidence going into
hope.
Newcastle to come in the Carabao Cup. I know Luby said it's a tough game, but you roll into Chelsea after that, and then you got United on the horizon, and dare I say, then you got Arsenal and PSG coming up soon. It does feel like a massive. I know people think I always overhype. It feels like people know they think I overhype these things, but it feels like a massive 7 games in 22 days just to calm everybody down that have maybe got some doubts at the moment, right? I think that might be fair to say.
And then you've got
Tune in in 3 weeks' time to see the fan base go into true meltdown.
And then you've got first 3 weeks of December. You've got Newcastle away, a game up at Dyche-inspired Forest, and then Liverpool at home. So it's, as I say, and Brentford at home, which will be, they'll be all out to put one over Frank. So it doesn't get any easier. We've got 8 weeks.
I told my missus I was in for a much more quieter season on here because she said to me, "How much more grey hair are you going to start getting now in this last 18 months?" And suddenly I think, God, it could be a tricky time ahead. But as always,
you'll end up like me, mate. You'll end up like me.
Mawani does not have like 45 to start. I don't think he's got enough in the tank at the moment. He's definitely for me, it's still a second half sub. I wish he was, but I don't believe he is. I think he's like 30 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah, Richard would definitely start.
I mean, look, there's an incredible degree of, there was excitement, of course, and expectation when Frank came in that it was all going to come together straight away. I just don't think for any club that happens. But I mean, all I can speak for, and you guys know, all being Spurs, and you go to the home ground a lot, that there's an expectancy there to play a certain brand of football. And I think that's going to be the one thing that's going to be really testing in these next few weeks, that I think what fans need to see, and look, again, I don't speak for everybody. I wouldn't want to speak for everybody. That's not what I'm like. But I think fans want to see at least a resemblance of what they see is a Tottenham style in terms of seeing a lot more attacking emphasis. But at the same time, like Johnny and Lubo, you've said as well, it's also about solidifying the defence. But I know I read those stats out about the defending earlier, and we are conceding a lot of chances. So I think it's going to be an interesting next few weeks in store. I want to say a massive thank you to this wonderful panel that will be getting together again in days rather than weeks. So we'll know very quickly how we're getting on. Lubo, thank you so much, mate. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Star. Johnny, thank you, mate.
Thanks for having me. Thanks to everyone in the chat.
Thank you very much. And Ash, thank you as always for footballing education on the tactics. I know many people love on this show. Look, from us all, guys, keep safe, keep well. We'll be back after Everton. Don't panic. Don't panic. From Lubo, from Johnny, from Ash. We've been the last word on Spurs. Keep liking, subscribing to everybody. And as always, come on, you Spurs.